All right, folks. So my hope today is that we can wrap up this demonstration file for Ladybug Inc. Just a total fictitious business, that I created this logo for. Just as an example of what you can do with just simple forms that you have imported into After Effects. So this is an example of what we're shooting for here today. So this is also an example of two of the compositions that we've already created up to this point. So if you'll remember, there's the first one where the ladybug wings, they fly in and they take their places. And then the antenna are the last things in that composition to pop up. And then in the second composition, it's just the ladybug with her wings flapping, and that's it. And so in this final composition, it's going to be a much larger composition window, and we're going to add a type element, and we're going to have these two visual elements interact with each other in some way. So as you can see, the ladybug, once its wings start to flap, it begins to take flight and does a little loop-de-loo, and then ends up spinning around to dot the I of the word E. So this is what we're going to try and accomplish today. And then after this, we will talk about how to export your file so that it can be a standalone video file. What that means is that if you want to share this file with somebody, a friend or family member, or maybe even a prospective employer, you could send them this file and anybody would be able to look at it. So if you tried to send your After Effects file to someone, they're not going to be able to open it. And even if they do have After Effects, they might not be able to look at it unless they have the asset files with it. And so typically that's not the way that you would share your work. You would always send it as a standalone file of some kind. So we'll go through that today. So before we really get started with, bringing our animation to this point, there's a couple of things that I'd like to kind of show you really quick on how to fine-tune your visual elements before you take them to that next level. So when I was prepping for this class, I realized that I need more time in my final composition to be able to tell the whole story that I want to tell. So I'm going to have to add some time to that, which also required me to go back and add some more animation to the ladybug composition with the flapping wings. It's not a big deal, easy to do, but this is a good thing for us to go through as a group because trust me, this is part of the job. You have to get used to going back and revising compositions, when you need to make things fit a certain way. The beauty about this program is that if you ever need to go back and say add length to a composition and make changes to it, if you've already used that composition, if you've already played it in a much larger one, because that composition that's playing in the larger one is linked to the original one, if you go back and make changes to the original, it will update the one that's being plugged into the larger composition. So you don't have to delete that layer and bring in the new one. It's automatic. One thing you might notice though is that if you have extended the time of its duration, in the original version, it won't automatically extend the time in the latest or in the last composition. You will have to extend that out manually, and it's super easy, and I'll show you how to do that. But it can be alarming if you don't understand, that that's what's happening, and you still just see that small little snippet of it. You're thinking, I just went back and, edited this. Well, I'm going to show you how you can extend the visibility of the rest of that composition. So I'm going to turn off this file and open up the one that's where we all should be right now. Okay, so this one has been worked ahead. Give me just a minute to get the second one up. Okay, so here we are. So this is the one that I need to work up and finish today with you guys. So this is where we should all be. Now, one of the things that I wanted to start out talking about is, you're always going to need to go back and fine-tune some of your work, all right? So I can see, you may or may not see it in the final composition if I left it like this, but this is one of these things that would just irritate me to no end, knowing that I don't have these objects lined up just right. Now, we didn't set keyframes for the placement of these objects. They're just there to be visible. So the beauty of that is that we can go through and we can kind of tighten this up, and it won't create a keyframe or it won't result in some sort of unwanted, animated effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off, wait a minute, which one was this? Where the dots animate in? Yeah. So I'm going to start with this one where the dots animate in. And right where it's kind of transparent, I'm using the playhead to find this sweet spot where I can see where all these imperfections are. And I just want to correct this wing here. So I'm going to go down to the right wing layer and unlock it. I'm going to open that layer, and I'm just going to position it on the x-axis and just bring that back in a little bit. And it looks like my other wing could use a little bit of zhuzhing as well. Oh, that was the wrong thing. That was the antenna. So notice I'm being very intentional about locking and unlocking my layers. So that's been cleaned up. Looks pretty good. Of course, my dots are a little bit out of alignment, but I don't want to waste more time in our demonstration trying to fix that. But that would be an easy fix. So now I'm going to move on to Ladybug 2. And this is where my wings start to flap. And it looks pretty good. Does everybody have theirs flapping like this? Okay.
I have those anchor points.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So, and that's good because I actually, like I was saying earlier, I need to add more time to this composition, to this one in particular, because I need that ladybug's wings to flap the entire time that she's flying around that composition window, doing that loop-de-loo, and then landing on the eye. So what I have her set up for right now just isn't really long enough. So I'm going to go to Composition Settings, and it's set up for 5 seconds. So I need something that's set up for, let's say, 15 seconds. So that would be the second column of numbers in the duration window. And now look what happens when I do this. So I've got extra time now in my composition, but all the visibility do all that right now. So I'll be relegated to my keyboard. So if I go past these frames here, it all vanishes. All right. So that's one thing I want to show you that to get used to if you ever have to extend the duration of something that's already been animated. The visibility will disappear, but you can fix that really easily just by selecting, well, not actually selecting those layers, but going through layer by layer. And if you place your cursor right over that edge, straddle that edge of visibility and non-visibility, you'll see that your cursor turns into like 2 arrows. It's kind of like the scaling symbol. If you just click and drag that out, drag it all the way to the end of your timeline. And then you should have visibility for that element at least. Now I'm going to go back. So see how now only that one element is visible? But that's going to change when we increase the visibility of the rest of these. So that's a dot. We don't want that. So wing needs to go all the way out. And quite honestly, I'm going to try something else. There might be an easier way to do this. If I just select all of these layers. Looky there. It lets me pull them all across the timeline at the same time. So now we have more frames of visibility, so that's good. All right, but our animation stops midway through, which means we have a little bit more animating to do. But don't let that get you down, because practice makes perfect, right? So that's what we're going to do right now. Now remember, before I animated these wings, the rotation point was right in the middle of them, all right? And so I know most of you have been caught up with me to this point, but those of you that might have missed that step, we moved the rotation, or excuse me, anchor point, to the point of the wing where we wanted it to stay anchored when we rotated it. And so we did that through the anchor point property in each layer, or at least each wing layer, so that now we have a rotation point where the wings rotate up right behind the ladybug's head, which is where it should rotate from. So I'm going to start the process of animating the rotation of the right and left wings. And so I'm just going to lock all of my other layers that I don't want to disturb and just work with the left and the right wing layers. And I'm going to drag my playhead all the way back to where the wing motion stopped, which would be right there. And I'm going to open these two layers. I'm going to hold the shift key down and select left wing and right wing, so it looks just like that. And then I'm going to hit the letter R. And that's going to open up just the rotation properties for those two layers. And that's really all we're going to be focused on. You can see the previous keyframes when we open that. So we can see our animation in there. And now we're just going to move on down the timeline like we did previously. Moving that playhead out a few frames. All right. And then turn our attention to the rotation parameters. Make sure that you don't have these selected at the same time. So select one or the other. I usually have to just deselect by clicking somewhere else and then go back. So I'm going to rotate the left wing to come back in. And then I'm going to rotate the right wing to come back in. And now you can see that two new keyframes have been created to mark that movement. And then I'm going to move my playhead out a few more frames. And this is going to be the new location for a new set of keyframes. And so then I'll just rotate those wings right back out. And I'm just doing this repetitive motion back and forth until I reach the very end of my timeline. Everybody with me so far?
Yeah. Is there like a way to repeat this by like copying it?
Yeah, you can. I don't know if I would do it with this example.
Okay.
But there are others that would be more suitable. Let me see if I can just go back 2 keyframes. And I've done it before, honestly, but I'd have to hunt and peck for a minute. Anyway, I'll come back to that. I don't want to hold class up with me trying to go poking around trying to find that feature. But that is a good question. Yes, you can copy and paste your frames. So I'm going to just continue rotating these. How's everybody doing? Okay. So to extend the timeline in your composition, you'll go to Composition in the menu bar. Make sure that that's the composition that you have selected or that's up right now. And because that's the composition settings that it's going to bring up. And then go to Composition Settings. And then close to the bottom where it says Duration. You see that? So there's like 4 columns for numbers. It's the second column, and that's for seconds. 15. Yeah. That should give us plenty of animation time to be able to have our ladybug flutter around. You are ready to start rotating or animating the rotation.
That's kind of the part I'm
Okay. Give me just a second, and I'm going to take a time out and walk around and just see how everybody's doing, and I'll help you out. So you'll end up with something like this, where that ladybug will just sit there and flap her wings for 15 seconds. I'm going to pause this and walk around, answer any questions, and then we'll move on. All right, so we don't have a lot of time left. So we won't be able to get through everything that I wanted to get through today, but that's okay. We will pick up where we left off on Tuesday. I was going to spend maybe the last 5 minutes kind of doing a run through of how we'll be putting this together on Tuesday. Okay, so if you do have time over the weekend, and if you feel so inclined, you know, tinker with this file some more. You know, work on trying to perfect what didn't work out so well. The things that were confusing you, get in there and try and problem solve. You know, that is really the best way to learn how to use these programs. All right, so again, I have 2 compositions here. So, you know, I have one where the ladybug forms, becomes visible, and that's it. That's all for that one. Then I have a second one where all this ladybug does is just sit there and flap her wings. All right? And so this is going to be the same ladybug in the final composition. We're just going to show her in 2 separate mini compositions. So I'm going to move on to a bigger composition, and this is pretty big. I don't want a black background. I'd like something that looks more like a sky. So if you ever want to change the color of your composition window, this is how you do it. You'll go up to Composition in the menu bar at the very top and go to Composition Settings. Make sure, because it's always going to bring up the composition settings for the composition that you have up front and center. So make sure that you're in the right composition before you go changing the settings. Now I know this is going to be my final one because it's wide, it's a large composition window. So I know I'm in the right one, plus I know I never named this one because I broke my own cardinal rule about good layer naming and organization. So this composition is going to be, let's shoot for 15 seconds long, because you know we can always add more time if we have to. Because right now it's 10 seconds long. And we're going to change the background color. So let's do this. And then you find a color that you want for your background. It's entirely up to you. But you'll do that by selecting this background color picker window. The background color box will open up. You have a whole variety of hues that you can choose from. Once you get into that hue family that you like, then pick a color. I'm going to choose OK. It looks good to me. And now here's the beginning of our new composition window. So the first thing I'm going to do, you see we have an empty composition. Our timeline is empty. We don't have any layers. I'm going to start with Ladybug 1. Drag that over to my screen. And I'm going to set her up kind of closer to the bottom. Not quite at the bottom, but I would like her centered. And I'm just eyeballing it. So I'm not using any real measurement system here. I'm going to hit the space bar and watch this play out. So there's the first part of my ladybug. Done. And then after 5 seconds, her visibility stops. I'm assuming all ladybugs are girls. That's why I keep calling her, but it could be a boy. I don't know. But I just assume because they just seem kind of girly. And now I'm going to bring Ladybug 2 composition over into this window. All right? And so I'm going to drag Ladybug 2 over and place it right over Ladybug 1. And I'm going to zoom in. My favorite way is just to change the screen zoom level. And the reason why I'm doing this, I'm also going to use the hand tool to kind of move it up so I can see all the parts of my ladybug. And I'm really just comparing how well these two are aligned. So I'm going to move my playhead out a little bit so I can actually see both ladybugs. Because remember, in the first composition, she's invisible at first. So that's why I have to drag my playhead out to bring her into visibility a little bit better. And this tells me that I need to line them up better because you want this process to be seamless. You don't want to think that these are two separate ladybug compositions. So one is just taking over the other is all. So, so here's my flapping wing one. I'm going to open its layer, open its transformation properties, scoot the position over and up just a little bit. So now we have this nice transition. And it's seamless. All right? But the thing is we don't need the flapping wings of the ladybug visible at the very beginning. So I'm going to show you down here in the timeline, you can see these filled in blocks of space. Okay, so what that represents is the visibility of this composition. It ends at the 5-second mark. So that means that the other ladybug, Ladybug 2, with the with the flapping wings, her visibility needs to pick up right after the first one ends. So you have that seamless transition. And they can even overlap just a nano smidgen. That'd be even better. That way you don't have like a little pop of nothingness, which people may or may not see. So you're going to slide the visibility of this ladybug over just like that. So that when you play these back and forth, you see, it's not obvious that these are two totally different little mini movies. So it looks like it's all just forming right there and then coming to life. All right? And then this is the ladybug on Tuesday, the next one with its wings flapping. That's the one that we're going to animate on Tuesday to do a little loop-de-loop and dot the I of our lettering. And then we're going to bring some type into it. We're going to look at a couple of different ways that we can animate the type in. This is not going to be our only time to work with type. But what I'm going to show you Tuesday is very basic. One is just to have the type fade in. It can fade in and scale up. So those are some things that you can do. And I'm also going to show you how you can create a mask path for your type. And what that means is you can use the pen tool to create a more free-flowing, organic kind of path and orient your type to that. And you can actually have the type trail along that path. So we'll go over that on Tuesday. That's just too much to get into today. So if you can come to class on Tuesday with something that's put together to this point, where you have your 2 small compositions, and then you have your final third composition, which is the larger composition window, and get your ladybugs assembled so that they are animating in the correct sequence. Okay, so the first composition with the dots animating in, the second composition with just the wings flapping. And then we're going to hit the ground running on Tuesday. Okay, can we do that? Feel free to email me over the weekend if you have any questions. If I need to do a Zoom call with you, I will. And I can share my screen with you and demonstrate right in front of you any questions that you have. So don't be afraid to reach out. Okay? How do y'all feel about that? Feel good about it? All right, cool. Well, have a good weekend. Have fun. If you are a Super Bowl kind of person, have a good time. But if you need a ride home, get somebody to drive you home, please. Be careful, because people get a little bit crazy at these Super Bowl parties. Anyway, have a good weekend. That's it for today. Sorry we didn't get through the whole thing like I thought we would, but it was still time well spent. Everybody needed to take a little time out and kind of regroup and kind of dig deeper into this program, and that's fine.